as a birth worker in 2015 after the birth of my first son. When I got pregnant, I was like, I don't like needles, I'm afraid of those, and I'm afraid of hospitals, so we're going to have to find something else. And so my husband and I just kind of took a deep dive. We found a birth center in Annapolis. It was 50 minutes from my house. And so my mom was in a panic. She was like, wait, are you going to make it? What is going on? What are you doing? But it meant that much to us. We wanted a different story than all of the stories that I was hearing, right? All of the stories of trauma and of decisions being taken away. And we didn't want that to be our story. I didn't want it to be my story. So we figured we were going to find something else, something where all the women that were going there, their stories were a little bit different. And so that's what we did. And we ended up having I ended up having a water birth. And then I breastfed my son for like 3.5 years. So it was a beautiful start to the mothering journey for me. And I was like, more women, I'm sure, want this same type of experience. More women are sick of hearing all of these stories of trauma. And so how can I help to bring that to light for more people, for more families, and give them that opportunity, show them what options are available to them. And so that's how I started into birth work. And so here we are today. Just to kind of set the stage for this conversation, the CDC released some information about reproductive health, and they said that about 700 women die every year from birth and pregnancy-related complications, and an additional 50,000 women suffer from injuries related to birth and pregnancy-related complications, and that is a lot, right? And when we talk about Black women in particular, the statistics for them are astronomical, right? So Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die or be injured from a complication due to pregnancy or birth related to those things, right? And so when you hear statistics like that, your mind automatically goes to, well, why? What's the root cause? What's the issue? What's connected to these things, right? And you'll have some providers that will tell you, oh, there's an increase in this country compared to all the other countries where those rates are going down because of chronic diseases are rising, right? And so the statistics are higher for African American women because the statistics of those chronic diseases like diabetes and preeclampsia and cardiovascular disease are higher in the African American community. Okay, that's true. But what about in California, right, where the past few years they've been able to decrease their rates of maternal death and injury by like 50%. However, the statistics for Black women are still the same, right? The number has gone down, but the statistic of it, of that 3 to 4 times greater, is still the same there, right? There was a study that recently came out. I think it was published in USA Today. They did a study in 13 different states, looking at all the hospitals and kind of the statistics of the results of births that are happening in those different states. And what they noticed is that the problems were in very specific locations, in very specific hospitals. It was just like 120 hospitals out of all those 13 states that had all of the problems. And so that takes us that it has to be more than just, oh, it's just higher statistics in these diseases, but we know that it's also stuffed into racism as well. We know that's a part of the problem. And so we wanted to open up this conversation and go a little bit deeper into what's going on, right? What's the issues? What's connected to the issues? But also, what are the solutions? What is going on, right, in the communities? What are people already doing about it? Because we know when there are issues, folks in the community start putting things together quickly, right? Oh, we have an issue, let's figure it out. Right? People are not just static, like, oh no, we're helpless. No, we're creating solutions, right? And so we're here today to kind of bring some of those solutions and some of the work that's being done to the light. And we have some beautiful women birth workers, my colleagues, who are going to join us for a panel discussion, and then we're going also join us and present on some of her work as well. So if I can have Anna and Desiree join me up here. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today. I first just want you to introduce yourself, tell us what you do, and let's start there.
Oh, okay. I'm Aries. I can handle it. Hi, everybody.
How you doing?
Hi. You're not watching TV in person. I'm sorry. You just get used to me in a moment. But my name is Rodney. I am the Executive Director of MOMCares, which is a postpartum doula program designed to support Black women with the NICU experience. So, as Ashley stated, there are a lot of our outcomes as Black women are very high, but also for our babies, we have the highest rate of premature birth, low birth weight, and fetal demise. And so that means that that compounded with the morbidity, the near-death experiences, Black women are spending a lot of time in the hospital and are unsupported. And so in 2014, when I gave birth to my son, I realized that there was a gap in service and support. And so I decided there was an issue, so we were going to create a solution. I'm also on the Mayor's Women's Commission for Health Equity and Education. I sit on the Maryland Breastfeeding Coalition. We have a bunch of different boards and things around the city that are specific to Black women and birth. Also am trained as a yoga instructor, grief counselor, Reiki master, doula, all the hippie stuff that makes me strange and wonderful. But yeah, so my charge is to make sure that Black women have support wherever they are in their mothering journey and in their process. I'm also the NARAL Pro-Choice Maryland Young Choice Advocate of the Year. So I'm sure we'll be talking about abortion at some point this evening. But Black women need to be supported in all points of their journey, and regardless of if their pregnancy ends in a birth. And so yeah, so that's me. I'm sure we'll get to know each other a little bit more as the night goes on.
My name is Desiree Israel. I'm a licensed master social worker and perinatal psychotherapist, and also one of the partners here at the Doula Collective, so welcome. I'm also the co-founder of the Perinatal Mental Health Alliance for People of Color, and I have a private practice, Motherland Co, where I do therapy with pregnant postpartum moms. Similar to Ashley and Anna, I came into this work from my own personal experience. These two are mine. And in 2012, I gave birth to Rashid in January. Kind of already fearful, being a mom that was raising her children, or her child away from family. I'm not from Baltimore, I'm originally from upstate New York. And then a month later, Trayvon Martin was killed. So that, coupled with all of my other feelings, brought on postpartum depression for me. And it wasn't until 2015 where I learned about what a perinatal social worker was, what the depths of postpartum depression, when I went to a training to Postpartum Support International to learn more about PMADs, as they're called. I realized that what I went through was a lot worse than what I thought. I didn't have suicidal ideation, I didn't have infanticide or anything like that, didn't think about killing him. It's just these intrusive thoughts that I had, I didn't realize were that bad. So after I went to the training in Michigan, came back in 2015, and I was like, okay, who else is doing this work? Like, who's a therapist, and who's a person of color that's doing this work? And I found 4 people, and one of them was Black, and she was like a psychiatrist that did not take insurance. So I said, this was me in 2012, and there's only 4 providers. I know I would not have been able to find from there, kind of just hit the ground running, became very active with Postpartum Support International. I'm a American co-coordinator, and the Alliance is a program within PSI. So basically, when someone calls the warm line through PSI and they're asking for services, especially if they're a family of color, we link them to providers of color in their area. Right now, we're building our directory of providers of color. We have about 15 states represented, and Maryland's providers of color are growing, essentially. What else do I do?
So much.
So much. That's the gist. Kind of statistics. 1 in 5 women will. Let me backtrack. Postpartum depression is the #1 complication in childbirth. 1 out of 5 women will experience some form of a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder. But out of that 1 in 5, 60% are usually women of color who go undiagnosed and do not seek treatment because there's no culturally affirming providers in their area. So we at the Alliance, everyone that I've worked with, we try to come back down. And that's why I do my work.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm wondering, you guys touched on some of the things, you told your stories, and some of the experience that you had. What are some of the dangers of the medical system that have led to the trauma that some of the women that you've worked with, as well as yourself? Like, what are some of those dangers that Black women are facing that lead to death, that lead to postpartum depression and things of that sort?
So quite honestly, it's bias and racial discrimination is what's leading to that. Like, so we know that these numbers that you stated earlier are across socioeconomic status, are across educational status, are across marital status. And so what that is saying to us is that this is an issue of race. This is someone looking at my Black body and not believing what I'm saying. There are studies that say that doctors are not paying attention to women's pain scores. So if I go into a doctor's office and I say I'm in pain, the first question is, what is your pain score on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst ever? If I say I'm at an 8, that doctor is going to say, you're not acting like you're at an 8, so you must not be at an 8. So we're not being listened to. We're being discounted and we're being thrown aside. So in Maryland, the two reasons why Black women are dying in Maryland, according to the Maryland Mortality Review, is hemorrhage and domestic violence. So hemorrhage is when you start to bleed out after you give birth, right? Something kind of tears, is some type of internal bleeding. That is a time issue. That is me saying there's something wrong, me looking at you and saying there's an issue here, let's fix it. But if I'm telling you that I'm in pain, if I'm telling you that I don't feel well, that I'm hot, that I'm cold, that I'm getting chills, and you're not listening to me, you're saying, oh, it's just normal. And so yes, after birth you can get chills because your hormones are fluctuating and you start to get chills. But if I'm saying this feels different and the doctor's not listening to you, then that's the issue. That's why we're dying. Hemorrhage is not a death sentence. It should not be. It's definitely about time and optimizing your time and taking care of it. And so I'm sure we'll talk later on about the domestic violence issue. But these deaths that are being measured it's being traced back that a man is saying, this woman is pregnant with my baby. I do not want her to be pregnant. I'm going to kill her. And so those are the issues that are happening in Maryland. That's what's happening to Black bodies, Black mothers, Black women in Maryland. And that's what's killing us. So with that being said, please take me off my soapbox when my time is up. But with that being said, there is we're talking about Malcolm X, right? Malcolm X is quoted in saying the Black woman, right, is the most not unprotected person in America, the undervalued person in America. And so we're being tasked to take care of an entire country historically, to raise those children, to feed those children, to love the men, all of the men, and then not being given value. And so that's showing up in our outcomes. Also, there is a study that says that, black don't crack. Somebody told me I looked like I was 28 yesterday. Hair flip. I'm not gonna tell you how old I am, but that old adage that black don't crack. But on a chromosomal level, black women are 7 years older than white women because of something called weathering, because that we are constantly at a state of stress. And that our chromosomes, our body, are on a molecular level, we are constantly at this heightened stress level. So that is having an effect on our molecules, which is going to also have an effect on our children, which is going to have an effect on the society as a whole. So, I'm going to stop there because that's more of what you asked for. Sorry.
Kind of piggybacking off of Anna, like, generational trauma is real. When you look at the history of obstetrics and gynecology and what was done to black bodies, we weren't given anesthesia for certain surgeries because we were told our pain tolerance. We didn't show that we had pain, basically. And you say, chromosomally, that being passed down generation to generation, our children's children are feeling that effect, that ripple effect. And also the domestic violence, like you stated. Black women dying via DV within the first year is #1 postpartum issue in Maryland. So, touch on all of those.
I'm sorry.
So looking on the other side of it, right? So we've identified some of the issues that's happening in the medical system. On the other side of it, what would be included in a great standard of care for black women who go in to have the babies, who are pregnant? What would that look like?
Continuity of care from conception to postpartum, having a doula, preferably a midwife, everybody loves their OB, well that's fine. Proper lactation training, childbirth education, like just from start to finish. Okay, I want to be pregnant. If I'm on birth control, how do I launch my birth control to conceive? Okay, do you have a referral for a midwife or OB, a culturally affirming OB that's going to listen to me? There are some. There are some. What's next? Childbirth. So childbirth education, a doula, hiring a doula who can advocate for you, is able to let you know, okay, this is normal, this isn't, this is what to expect. Helping, getting the partner involved, dad or partner involved, very key and important because you see a lot of people check out in the delivery room. What's that? Lactation, getting proper breastfeeding education. I know that is best, but breast is good too. So, knowing the benefits of breastfeeding and why it's important to breastfeed, especially as a black woman, because we weren't allowed to, or we were breastfeeding, wet nursing during slavery. And then optimal postpartum care. Postpartum care is it's an afterthought. People are worried about the baby shower and all of the postpartum care is the utmost important thing. Make sure you're not walking or doing too much. Make sure you're tending to baby. Make sure someone's tending to mom. It's very important. That's something that's totally missed. And then for providers, screening. So doing a DV screen, doing a postpartum depression screening, whether it's a Edinburgh or PSS or PHQ-9, there are different screenings too. They say you should screen at the 6-week appointment, but 3 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 3 months, continual, not just stopping at that 6 weeks or 8 weeks after you give birth and then you're done with me. Because you see that a lot. A lot of people don't even screen. So.
Right. And so what can a mother do and her community do to help create that type of experience for her?
Come to the Bloom Collective.
So I think that the community has to be involved, right? So I know specifically in Baltimore, we're all in our little, I'm over here, I'm in my pocket over here, I'm in my pocket over there. We're gonna talk to that person because they stepped on my foot when I was in 5th grade and I never, recovered, it happens. We're all here. We know that that's what's happening. But creating this actual net of community. where like I'm activating community right now, you know, to be completely transparent. I thought today was Tuesday. And then I looked at my calendar and it's Wednesday and I don't have childcare. So I had to call my friend and say, hey, can you watch my son? So right now my son is down the street with someone who didn't know before 4:30 that she was watching him. And that's a luxury. That is a luxury to too many people in Baltimore City. And that is where the issue lies. Where, you know, we don't have to have our hands in every pot. Everybody doesn't have to be, you don't have to be the person that's making sure mom is being fed and making sure mom is doing, is taking care of herself and breastfeeding well and taking care of the child and giving her rides. But there should be a community, a net of community, and not just the people that got the head wraps on, not just the people that have the right uniform or the people that have the right mentality, not just the people that are vegan or ITEL, people that are eating McDonald's. These moms need help too. And so there is a need that if we're going to uplift our community, if we're going to support our community, it has to be the community, not just these people right here because they're doing it right? That's how we've gotten here before, because that was the tool of the oppressor, right? Separate, divide, put you here, put you in a little bit, have to give you a little bit more power over here, and that keeps everybody stuck and stressed out. And so personally, yes, there are, and Desiree gave a wonderful continuum of care, and there are a number of touch points within that continuum of care that are also in the community. I don't think I could go anywhere in Baltimore City and say I'm a doula without somebody being like, me too.
Right.
Like, so we should not be grasping for straws when we're finding moms that need support. We should not be grasping for straws when we see somebody that's struggling. And it doesn't have to be just one person. It needs to be the community. Sister so-and-so is real good with the baby. She keep them in line, you know. My cousin Bootsy got a car. He can take me to the grocery store. Like, you know, like everybody has a place. And what I have noticed is there is this culture of throwing it away. Like, you know, what did they say on Facebook? The petty culture. Like, oh, I'm petty, you know, like, oh, I'm going to just cut it off. I'm going to ghost you. All that stuff, it's not necessary. It's killing the community and it's not supporting. And so one thing that I say is, I don't care what that mom has gone through or has been through or who she is. I don't care if she knows who the father of her child is. I don't care if she's been on drugs or whatever. She's a mom, which means that she's a conduit for spirit, and she's bringing spirit into the world, which means that she needs to be supported because that spirit is going to come and manifest in this world, and we need to make sure that they're okay and mom is okay. So
I think that touches on another thing, one thing that I really try to put into my own work, right, is educating the community as well. I did my grad thesis around breastfeeding and myths that are held in the community, and I interviewed not just moms, but I also interviewed men and women who were not parents, because we know and research shows us that support is key when it comes to, you know, the length of breastfeeding or if a mom breastfeeds at all, if it comes to a mom who wants to do a natural birth, if it actually happens. Support is really key in those things, so educating the community is a big piece of it as well as educating the mom and all these things too.
And I would also say, add to that, managing expectations. So personally for me, like if I would have had it my way, I would have had my son Aiden in Druid Hill Park, by the lake, by a tree, by myself. Nobody touched me, nobody said anything. There would be butterflies and sunflowers everywhere, and we would have just walked off into the sunset. My son came at 28 weeks and spent 6 months in the NICU. And so I had to shift my brain from a very like natural water birth, my booby's gonna be out everywhere, so just get used to it, to like more, like honestly, but like having to talk about morphine and having to talk about weaning morphine and being in an isolate, not being able to touch my baby, and not being able to breastfeed, and all of those things. And it was devastating to me, and I have seen it be devastating to other mothers, because there is this right way to do it. And if you don't do it this way, you have failed. And you are not a mom, and your body has failed, and you have failed your child already. And so I think while we all acknowledge that that a natural birth is best, low intervention is best, we also need to be very clear that sometimes that's not the case because of the impurities that are going through our bodies, the stress that our body is going through. And so I feel like it's very important as we're preparing community to also prepare mom and family and dad to manage expectations and to be able to make these decisions as they come up.
Absolutely. And so what you're talking about speaks to like empowering the mom with information, empowering her community. And so I want to know specifically in the work that you're doing, how are you empowering your women and their families, their support systems, to make the best decisions for their situation, and to, start or continue their mothering journey in a positive way?
I know, I have so much to say. I'm going to backtrack real quick though.
Okay.
Because you said two things that I totally agree with about community and people being in silos. Like, this work is devastating, but it's exciting at the same time. So when you first become a birth worker, you want to do all of the things. Like, I'm going to be a life coach, I'm going to be a doula, I'm going to be a midwife. Like, okay, calm down. Let's pick one thing. Excuse me, can we go back, please? Thank you. Because I know that it was like that for me. And I said, Desiree, you have the social work degree. Adding all these other things is just too much. Let's see what I can do with my social work degree, which mental health was my thing. But with having community to refer to people, there's no reason why I shouldn't, like, I refer a therapy client to Anna, or I'll refer someone in the family to Ashley. Like, you should all know what everyone is doing. So I want to touch that on that point. And then preparing the family, I brought up the baby shower because it's something that always comes up when I'm dealing with someone and they're pregnant. I'm doing therapy with someone and they're pregnant, and then postpartum comes about. Rashid and Kingston, can we bring it down, please? Thank you. The baby shower is like the big thing. Everybody looks forward to the baby shower, and I always tell my clients, instead of having this huge registry of things, have like certain things that you want. Do you want a doula? How much does the lactation cost? Lactation consultant cost? How much does if they want vaginal steaming after postpartum? How much does that cost? Have your people have a calendar for the next 3 to 6 months and do a meal train. Write out who's going to bring meals, have someone prepare meals for you, freezer meals, crock pot meals, something so family can bond with baby, not just mom, but just family can bond with baby, and have a visiting schedule and all of that. So preparing families in that way. But that's a good question. Can you repeat it one more time?
Yes, and before I repeat the question, talking about the baby shower, I love the baby shower, right? Because the baby shower is a great point to educate the family, right? Because you have everybody in one place, they're all focused on baby, they're all focused on mom, right? And so for me, I've created this best baby shower ever box. So I'm like, let's use these games and activities to tell everybody about birth and what mommy's gonna be going through, and tell everybody about breastfeeding, so that they can kind of be giving her the same information, the same type of things for her to make, so that she can make the decisions that she wants, right? So it's a great point of contact is the baby shower, in my opinion. My question, go ahead.
So, what I also wanted to add to that is also being very supportive to families. Like, I have seen, and so as people of color, we pride ourselves in not needing. I got it. No, I got it. Leave me alone. I don't need you. I'm self-sufficient. And so I've seen people say, I've seen a meal train go out to family members, and then it be brought, oh, we got food. We good, we got food, we not asking for food, like, but so this idea of us being so insular, and also reiterating, like, you just had a baby. I don't care if you have a whole farm in your backyard. Let somebody bring you some lasagna. Like, let somebody bring, like, honestly. or vegan lasagna, whatever you want to eat. Like, let somebody bring it to you. But I've found that there's always this kind of like push and pull with not needing help and not wanting to appear vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that's steeped in our history in this culture. You know, this country is the way we interact with our own vulnerability. But creating systems and creating space that says it's okay and natural for you to need and desire and accept help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the question was, in your work specifically, how are you empowering women to do some of the things that you're suggesting?
So, sorry. It's late, y'all. I'm tired. So MOMCares currently has developed something called the Holistic Care Plan, which is a mind, body, spirit care plan of action for care after postpartum. And so it's based on the chakra system, and it goes over every single thing that you might need. But we use that holistic care plan with our moms for a 42-day postpartum period. And so as we're moving through that care plan, we're also preparing moms to be able to continue what they need. So we're doing stuff like support surveys and like, who do you have? Do you have and the thing is with support, like you might find one friendly face and you know they'll say yes, but that becomes fatigue, like you'll be in some type of health fatigue because I'm always asking Carlin, can you come pick me up? Carlin, can you take me to the store? Carlin, can you come? Yes. And then one day Carlin's gonna be like, no. So creating these systems where we're like, okay, so I know she's good at this, she's willing to help with this, she communicated to me in the baby shower that she wants to help with this, and being able to access those things. And so it's not we're not operating as the savior or the fixer. We're helping moms think about things that they might not be thinking about because they're growing an entire human, so go figure, they might not be completely like there. But helping them figure out what it is they need and what is priority, and helping them get from that need to having what they want. And so we also support women in, not just in the NICU, but we support just mothers through our healing circles and inviting them, advertising quickly.
Yes.
The 31st at No Boundaries, we'll be doing a community dinner and creating meals together and talking about dietary restrictions and things that we want to change in our diet, but also meals on a budget and creating a whole meal together and sitting and eating. But having spaces that are just like, come and talk about whether, your baby's poop is normal. Come and talk about, and then come and talk about, and hear somebody who has a teenager and talk about how many times they have to ask them to clean their room, and like find some commonality and just, we're big on building that community. So I'm going to keep saying it, like the way that we empower is making sure that people have access to their community and making sure people know that they are allowed and should feel entitled to be able to call on and access their community, because that, in my opinion, is the #1 killer of the Black family, is feeling like they don't have support.
A lot of my clients I get postpartum, but the few that I do get during pregnancy, I try to make sure, for one, we do a birth plan. I know I'm a therapist, but I'm also a trained doula, so we discuss the birth plan and what that looks like in their ideal birth. The majority that I do get, and I do send a lot of referrals, contact this person, she's a doula, or, these are 5 doulas in your area, or, that work with the hospital that you're giving birth at. For postpartum, I do kind of similar, but not as expensive. I like that. Holistic care plan. A postpartum care plan where we do an eco-map of, social work term, sorry, an eco-map of who is their support system and who they can contact readily if they need something. And also, I noticed processing their birth is very important. So after I let my client contact me when they want to resume therapy after they give birth, and then we process it. I hold space for that. I don't say anything. I just ask one question: how did it go? Or was it what you expected? Or what went wrong? Or from there see if there's any need. Okay, what do you need now? And then linking them to those services. So that's my process of making sure they get what they need.
Before we open it up to questions from the audience, the last question I want to ask is other resources. What other resources would you point folks to if you had a mom who's starting this journey, who is thinking about, becoming a mom, or when you're thinking about becoming a mom? Where would you point them to?
Bloom Collective. I'm always going to shameless plug. So here at the Bloom Collective, we do a lot with myself, Stephanie, and tonight Stephanie. I didn't introduce you to tonight. Stephanie Etienne is one of our partners. She's a midwife. She does preconception counseling, fertility counseling, what else? Postpartum support, and she's here for consultations and everything. So yeah, definitely come here. We will definitely point you to whatever you need, whether it's a medical provider or whatnot. Postpartum Support International, I always have to plug them for support. They have a lot of information on their website about perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, what that looks like, tips and tricks for dads and partners. They have a whole map and directory for every state. You click on the state, you can see who's the coordinator of that state, what free support groups are in the area, and it is international. I think over 40 countries are represented. Don't quote me, but and what else? That's it.
So there's an extensive list. I think the good thing about Baltimore City is we're very reactive. When there's a need, there's always something that just kind of pops up. So things like the Judy Center, I often activate the Judy Center for my moms if they need diapers, if they just need like play groups. They have food giveaways. The Maryland Breastfeeding Coalition has a huge database of lactation consultants, and more often than not, you can find someone who's willing to give some type of consultation for free or pro bono or something like that. What else? The Bloom Collective.
We have a lot of resources.
We're very dense in resources, and I think that has it's a double-edged sword because as many resources as we have, there's not always funding to support those resources. So things are kind of opening and closing and opening and closing. But so I send my moms to men for acupuncture if they need acupuncture. MOMCares is the nonprofit arm, but like if there's somebody who needs a specific service like yoga steam or Reiki or something like that, I send them to the Rising Mama, which is my other side of me.
So pretty much you just call you guys.
No,
push us
No, it doesn't have to be us.
Right. The thing is, there's so many things. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what, unless you came and said, "I need X, Y, and Z." But there's what I tell my moms is, if I can't do it, I know somebody who does.
Yes.
If I don't do it, I know somebody who does. And also choice. Like I might be able to do it, but you might not want to sit in front of me on top of a steaming pot of herbs. Like that's fine with me. You can do it with somebody else. There's, like I said, there are this community is truly blooming and blossoming and becoming, and so there are people that are all over that can support in multiple different ways, which is something that is beautiful.
Do we have any audience questions?
I have two questions. My first is a question about Black women who may be interested in mothering but have had a diagnosis from a medical professional about being barren. So I'm thinking about endometriosis or PCOS. And I'm also thinking about Black women who are a little older, maybe older than 35 and not had children. What advice would you give them about their desire to birth a child?
I talk too much. Okay. So we'll talk about the fertility first. So number one, this advanced maternal age. is in air quotes. So, you know, we talk a lot about like how men can get pregnant into their 70s and all this other stuff, and women, like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, we don't, like, so for instance, something that people don't know is after the age of 35, your instances of having a natural multiple birth increases. And so with that, I would say find someone who is supportive in the journey, and you know, we have a fertility counselor right here. And I'm sure there are considerations and things that you want to pay attention to, but you have been with your body for longer than anybody else, probably other than your mom, right? Because you were a little baby. But you've been with your body as it is right now for the longest, and you know your body. And so if you look at trends, people are having babies later. And so when people talk to me about advanced maternal age, I just kind of know that, like, what you can do is be in optimum health and take care of yourself and prepare yourself for what it is that you want, you know? And that's easier said than done. That's an access thing as well. But if you know that that's what you want, you can keep that in your mind and be prepared and seek out people that are trained to help you through that process. I'm trying really hard not to be that guy. But I will only slightly be that guy. But with the other diagnoses and things like that, what I will say is that Black people have a very intricate relationship with the medical community and the introduction of diseases that could possibly inhibit your ability to reproduce. I also know that your body is able to heal itself. It is designed to heal itself. It is designed to multiply as well. So I'm gonna keep
say more about
say more.
I know where you're going.
I don't want to be that guy on camera. Yeah, we'll talk about that. But so what I will say is that, again, my personal belief is that what my brain wills is what I think is, and I've experienced that enough to be able to say that with some certainty. And so, if my answer to you, which is not a medical answer, my answer to you is that you decide what you want for your body. But when you decide, you have to decide. And so I'll tell you just a quick example. When my son was born, they wouldn't let me see him because they thought he was going to die. And I said, so we're not going to say the word death. No one says death to me. I don't see anything about death. I don't hear anything about death. We're not talking about death. We're going to I'm going to retool my brain so that I think, whenever I start to think something negative about my son or his health conditions, we're going to switch it, immediately. He was in the NICU for 6 months, but my baby is 4.5. And so because of that, I know that your mind, when your mind and your heart and your spirit agree, that's it. So.
I would also say to consult an herbalist or a naturopathic doctor, because there are herbs and other natural remedies that can assist, especially with endometriosis and PCOS. I'm also a herbalist, but I didn't want to say that. But I'm certified in women's health, but definitely, yeah. But everything that she just said.
Thank you.
There's a local group called Pineapple Connections that I think they meet somewhat regularly, or they have events that specifically for folks that are struggling with fertility or about various fertility experiences.
Pineapple Connection.
Yeah.
Plus that Indigos and physical therapy.
Yeah, so this is it's kind of a two-part question. It's a political question. So, in the news right now, you have a conversation about the abortion bans in the various states around the country. And one of the things that I find is that most of the conversations about reproductive justice center on abortion, and most of the conversations in the public mainstream about reproductive justice center certain networks of white women that are particularly in political and financial positions to be able to steer resources and drive the conversation. So my question is kind of twofold. One, what would you say to push back against the I think what is in the public mainstream around the representation of white women being seen as like, you know, the kind of foundational in the world of reproductive justice? And what ways does the politics of that show up in your work? Particularly, because even, and in the example, that in your response to Nadira, I would imagine that there's some political pressures for people to not seek the kind of response that you even gave to that question. Because there's an industry around, you know, the medical approach to these issues that probably have politics attached to it. So if y'all could, you know, just have a reaction to those two parts of the question.
My answer will be very short. I'm going to be completely honest. I know what's going on, but I don't know what's going on because I absorb so much that I have to protect my psyche. And it is, especially doing this work, I cannot watch everything. I may watch the news in the morning to get the weather, and I do know, like, Alabama just passed, and there was another state.
Mississippi.
Okay. I can't. I just can't. But centering, you said something about the white representation. So I just came from Austin. I'm a member of the National Perinatal Task Force with Jenny Joseph, who's a midwife out of Florida, and just an awesome elder. And we just came back from a retreat, and what I got from that was we got us, basically. We don't need white-led organizations. We've been birthing babies for years, for centuries, and there are people out here that have been doing the work for years that are here and available to assist. So I'll pay more attention now that you brought up that question, but I can't. My psyche can only take so much.
So I am in an interesting position as a growing nonprofit who's actively looking for funding and actively looking for partnership throughout the city. And something that I had to really sit with is this feeling that, like, white women in particular love me. And they want to come, and they want to help, and they want to support. And I'm like, where are my sisters at? Where are they at? What are they, like, am I selling out? And so what I had to sit with is the fact that black women didn't create this. Black women did not benefit off of black women dying. And so if you stole some money from her, I'm not going to come and ask her for that money back. I'm going to come after you. I'm going to accept that money back on her behalf from you. And so I had to think of it in that way, and even process it in that way, that white women in general, at least the white women that are coming and seeking me out, understand in some way that they have benefited off of black bodies, and that they understand that there is something to pay for that. And that, but also, even that, like, their $500 isn't going to do anything. Their volunteering for a couple of my events isn't going to do anything. Them sharing my event on Facebook a couple times isn't going to do anything. Them cheering for me isn't going to do anything. But when I'm asking, so MOMCares has a campaign going on called Correct the Crisis. So when I am screaming Correct the Crisis, I am talking to white women who have this access, who have the voice, who have the political steering power, who have come to me and said, I want to help. Okay, this is what you want to help with? You're going to help me make sure that this bill gets into law. You're going to create this fundraising opportunity for me. You're going to pool your friends and your resources so that this work is being done. And not to say that I am dependent on that, But if it's there, if people are asking me, have a seat, come on. And that doesn't give them extra access or control over what I'm doing. I'm very clear in the conversations that I'm having with people when they do come and say that they want to support. Thank you for your support, but I'm still doing this. I am not sharing my intellectual property with you. I am not completely interested in being 100% partnered with you in that way. And people get it. And the thing is, we're at a point in this country where this division and the silence of white women is where we're at now. And so people are like, oh shit, I gotta do something, I gotta fix it, I gotta help. And unfortunately, we live in a white dominant, as far as leadership, capitalistic society. And so if we're going to break down the structure and retool the structure, we're going to benefit from having people within that structure that's going to help us take those nuts and bolts out.
The other thing, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a point about that, as Black women, we never get our things, right? And even the concept of reproductive justice was started by Black women. It is Black women who came up with the idea that we can't just talk about pro-choice in the context of abortion rights without talking about, okay, what happens if we choose to have a baby? How can we create a world that is welcoming to that child? How can we create a world that's safe for that child? How can we create a world that's safe for us, that respects our bodies, that respects our choices? It's not just about the ability to choose that one thing, the abortion. It's about making all the choices in your life that give you power. And that's Black women who came up with that. And so I think it's like a reiteration that like motherhood is political. Black women have always known that motherhood is political. We've always practiced motherhood in a community-oriented way because we understand that the choices that we make help create the next generation. And that's, I just think it's important to always keep that in the forefront.
I was thinking about Black Maternal Health Week and the Black Mama Matters Alliance, and they came out with policy focuses, if you will. I think you guys have information on it over here, but just kind of outlining the demands from a Black woman's perspective and the things that we need, particularly when it comes to political justice in that arena. And so that's something, I just feel like when it comes to a lot of political issues, white organizations always try to take over. And I don't think, in a lot of cases, we don't give up our power, but we create our own space to be like, you know what, y'all can go ahead, because y'all tried it. So keep going, and we're gonna stay here, and we're gonna talk about what it is that we need to focus on. And I think that's an example of that is the Black Mamas Matters Alliance, and the policy briefs that they put out.
I will also say that in the same vein that that abortion and reproductive health is something that has been an intricate issue for Black women since the mid-Atlantic slave trade, when we were throwing our babies off of the boat because we didn't know what we were getting into. And so it's more than just for black women, it's more than just I don't want to have a baby right now. It's, is it safe for me to have a baby? Is it okay? Can I afford to have a baby? We're talking about the maternal mortality. 3 to 4 times, I'm risking my life to have your baby. Am I willing to do that? And am I supported in being able to say, I'm not having your baby? And so I was on the radio yesterday, and what I found was there are a lot of men that have a lot of feelings about stuff that they don't. you felt it? I stopped. But there are a lot of men that have very strong feelings about women's bodies and the idea of a woman having complete autonomy of her body. And what I said to those men who were yesterday was, if you want to have complete control of a woman's body, then you need to be able to protect that body. You need to be able to honor that body. You need to be able to be within that body and understand the power that that body holds. And there's nobody on this planet that is not a woman, not a black woman, that can experience that and hold that responsibility. And so we're talking about, oh, well, she already had my baby. You know what I'm saying? But will you be able to sustain that baby? Are you going to be mad and walk away? And I think that speaks even more to how intricate the mind F that was placed on us and has been placed on us as a unit, as a family, as people that are relating to each other, because we are constantly pitted against each other. And so instead of joining and using the voice to say, I'm protecting my woman, it's a lot easier to say, you're taking away my rights just like everybody else is taking away my rights. And that's not. What was the organization's name?
Well, it's not an organization yet. There's a website.
So
There's a
the name that
curriculum.
you,
Action for Safe Maternity Care. Action, ACTT. Ask questions until you understand the answers. C is claim your space, both physical and mental. T, trust your body. And T, tell your story. And it's a program by Black women for Black moms. And this is something that it is hoped will become a nationwide campaign to alert the community about the need for support. That's one thing. And then to also make sure that moms who haven't even become moms yet or haven't thought about getting pregnant are aware that you need to vet your services. You don't want to find out at 8 months that you want to switch doctors because this place is terrible. You know, they don't respect me, they're dismissive, they're rude, you know, this kind of stuff going on. And I love that there's a lot of talk about support, but unless we are addressing the elitism of professionals in healthcare, and even from what I understand, I was a wannabe midwife obstetrician. I'm retired now, but because my first daughter was born here in Baltimore, delivered by a midwife, I got into obstetrics. So my husband at the time said, you don't want to be a midwife, because that's what I wanted to do. Once I was delivered by a midwife, I said, I want to be a midwife. I want to help women deliver babies like she helped me. He said, oh, you won't make any money. You won't be able to get a job. He was a pre-med. So this was his, and I was 18, so I listened to him. And I wound up 8 years later, and 2 more kids later, going to medical school. But 20 years later, I realized that, there was something wrong. And now, 5 years later, I'm part of and I know you can't tell by looking at me, but I am African American. And so I have a deep sense from being in an interracial family of how horrific the effects of injustice all these years. And I see now that I'm retired about what birth injustice, what birth trauma is. I know the procedures that doctors do to women without getting permission and without even evidence. The fetal monitoring, I'm going to get off my soapbox, but I want to know if people are starting to look at what are the numbers in the hospitals so that you can avoid going to those hospitals.
So the numbers are definitely present. All of the birth workers that I know have their own kind of tally sheet and can say, okay, this is the hospital that's good for this is the hospital that's good for this. As far as like a unified database,
That's why the maternal, review boards and all of that are developing, that are popping up now are so important, because there isn't a collective place where you can find all this information. It's left up to the hospitals to report their own numbers.
And so I would say with that, so a win that we did just have is with the Maternal Mortality Review Board, who has historically been just hospitals, just doctors looking at these numbers and creating reports. And so there was a bill that I was privileged to work on that has now made it legal to share that information out to different community organizations, so that they can take that information and service the people in the community around those type of different outcomes or whatever's going on. But up until last Monday, it was just the mortality review board was just doctors and hospitals looking at the numbers with no real sense of what needs to be done, or even feeling like they need to create policies or anything around doing something with that information.
I would also say that a lot of individual birth workers and birth educators like myself have put it into our own curriculums, like making sure that we're telling moms, hey, interview your doctor, choose your doctor, don't just fall into it, or choose your birthplace, don't just fall into it. So yeah, there's a lot of individual responsibility being taken for that, but not so much like a formal thing, but it seems like it's coming up.
Yeah.
It all comes down to money too, though.
Comes down to money.
It comes down to money. It's like, I think when you start to say, as people with access, I'm not going to come to that doctor because I've heard that doctor has deplorable, C-section rates, and even if they're not affecting me per se, if I'm a white woman, it doesn't affect me. My relationship with this doctor is not necessarily affected, but I know that doctor is doing this to other people. If we start to pull our support in that way, you affect people's bottom line, and that's how change is made. It's not about changing hearts and minds. It's about the money.
People don't change when they see the light. They change when they feel the heat. I like to say. But what about bringing a support person to those office visits so that you can start to, have a little more power in the relationship? The power differential is a serious problem. People give too much power to the doctor takes too much power. The idea that you could be sitting perched on an exam table in a paper gown for an hour or half an hour, and they just come in, breeze in and out, and this kind of stuff. It's disrespectful. That's the way doctors are trained. They're trained in a culture of disrespect. So until that changes, And until they undo racism in the American College of OBGYN and all the medical schools and all that, there's always going to be an equity gap that you alluded to. No matter how many bundles they put for safety in the hospitals, black women are going to be dying at a proportionately higher rate until we really say, get those standards, the New York City standards for respectful care at birth. Have you all heard about this? They have standards. The Department of Health work with the community, develop standards for respectful care at birth, and they're disseminating it through the whole, all the birthing centers in the hospital. In the city, because they have a terrible track record. It's 10, 12 times higher rate of death at those hospitals.
We're gonna have to look into that.
So that I think that Baltimore could have also do the same thing and get the Department of Health to disseminate these standards. The doctors are going to give you pushback. I know this. You're going to get pushback. So this has to be disseminated through the Department of Health into the hospitals so that the doctors start to realize women are going to be coming in expecting to be respected and get informed consent and shared decision making around any of these issues that they try to push women into doing.
Absolutely.
With fear
Thank
tactics.
you. We have another question?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I just want to thank you ladies for, one, providing all this information. I'm an advocate. I have any children, but I don't plan to have children. And I just wondered if you could just speak more about, volunteer opportunities with the organization, also any events that you might have coming up, anything like that that, somebody can get involved with, with the organization, because I think that it's, you guys are a wonderful asset to the community. And I always try to share the posts on Facebook because I have several friends who have children and have listened to their stories and just have heard horrific things that really made me really sad. And, I'm fortunate to be able to make a decision when I would be having my children because I'm at the age where I, waited and it just didn't happen for me until, whatever time I choose to, but some people don't have that luxury. So I always try to share that information, but I just wondered if you could just speak more about that. And thank you also being ladies to bring your expertise and your knowledge. Thank you.
So sure. So volunteer opportunities, we are always looking for, so we have developed a volunteer, MOMCares has developed a volunteer position with the working title of Mom Mentors. And so that means that as we are getting clients, if there are small things that client needs, that mom needs, maybe a ride back and forth to the hospital, for doctor's appointments, if she just needs somebody to kind of talk to over the phone, just kind of like a girlfriend to talk to every once in a while. If she needs help with food prep or food, stuff like that, like these small touch points, we connect them with people that are interested in doing those things. And so we provide childcare at all of our events, and so we're always looking for childcare volunteers. And then also people that are just, that are willing, so MOMCares is 3 years old. So we are always looking for people that have expertise in any number of areas that are willing to provide that. So if it's social media, please take social media off my plate. I hate social media. With social media management, even we have a volunteer who's doing some fundraising stuff for us, graphic design. Like the opportunities are endless. And so we are excited to be launching our Young Mothers program over the summer. So we are providing support and programming to 20 young mothers from the age of 16 to 21 over at Dorothy Kite Elementary School Monday through Fridays throughout the summer. And so also workshop leaders. So people, if you have an expertise and you want to bring it to a mom, if you want to bring it to a healing circle, if you want to come to the Young Mothers program and bring it to our moms, we're always open to that. We're looking for dads and for males to create space for our moms and to have conversations and things like that as well.
What's your website?
Website is www.therisingmomcares.com. We have our healing circle on the 31st. It's the last Friday of the month at No Boundaries throughout the summer. Those are the two things that we got going on right now. It's a little longer.
I forgot to print this. It was supposed to be in your seats, but I did not have time to go to the office. So we have a study coming up here. We're hosting a focus group June 1st and 2nd. June 1st from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. and June 2nd, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. And it is funded by the AshleeJaye Johnson Foundation. We're looking for Black moms to share their birth experiences. They must have labored in the hospital, and you have to have 2 qualifications: no prior hospital birth in the last 2 years, and no prior history with death of babies prior to, during, or after birth. Food, beverage, childcare, and monetary incentives will be provided, and it will be here June 1st and June 2nd. That's one thing. So not volunteer, but if you know moms, Black moms, please send them our way. Yes, that's what yes.
That's through the collective?
Yes. And Facebook is the Bloom Collective Baltimore. Our website is not up yet, but we share everything on our Facebook page: events, pictures, our contact information. Sometime next month, I do not have a date yet. The Pump Spotting RV will be coming back to Baltimore. We hosted them last year. They came to Duncoat Cafe in Reservoir Hill for a few hours. It's basically a souped-up RV with a lot of lactation resources. They usually try to get an IBCLC or lactation consultant in the community to come in for free consultations during that time. So we're hoping that they'll set up shop here on Greenmount and be great for the community. And then we are planning a film festival. I'm not getting too much info, but planning a film festival is going to be great. So be on the lookout for that, and we will need volunteers for that.
And what's your website?
So my business website is www.DesireeIsrael, my name is DesireeIsrael.com. That's Motherland Co's website, and then for the Bloom Collective, you can search the Bloom Collective Baltimore on Facebook.
And for my stuff, it's AshleeJaye.com. I have the Black Mommy Potluck the first Saturday of every month, and then other little events here and there. We are planning a community baby shower type thing, so we can definitely use, or I can definitely use some volunteer help with that and making that vision come to light. I'm AshleeJaye, AshleeJaye on all the social media stuff, Facebook and Instagram and website.
My social media, MOMCares Baltimore, on anything will pop me up. Or the right.
At motherland.co on Instagram, sorry. And I also have a Facebook page, Motherland Co.
does around issues very similar to reproductive justice. So thank you all for joining us.
Oh.
Bam.
Every Friday we have Bloom Cafe from 10 to 12. So for anybody in the community, especially here in Greenmount West, families with children 0 to 5 can come here. We have snacks and treats, coffee, tea, toys.